Welcome to another session with the Superintendent, where we take the opportunity to discuss critical issues with people affected by decisions we make in the school department. It's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Ron Struminski to our program today and to talk about some very critical issues that are both affecting staff, students, and the community as it relates to the Ed Reform Law of 1993. September of 1997 is a very critical date. It is a date where we must implement the new time and learning standards. And those will most importantly affect the high school. And so as we move toward implementing those standards, it's appropriate we talk with you, Mr. Struminski, because you've been spending a lot of time in the last year and a half trying to get ready for those. First of all, would you talk a little bit about it with us, what this thing time and learning means?
Well, as you mentioned, of course, and I think everyone has heard of the Educational Reform Law. It's legislation that was passed in 1993. And time and learning, of course, is just a small part of the overall picture of educational reform. But the basic tenets of time and learning say that time is essential for good learning. That there was a pretty general agreement among legislators, among business people, among educators themselves, that we needed to spend more quality time on learning in Massachusetts. In comparisons, I think people have read article after article and seen many TV magazine shows comparing our school day, for example, to Europeans and Asians, and we fall far short in terms of time. So one of the portions of time and learning that was essential was to do a study, put some people together to look at how we're spending time, with the idea that we come away from this with more time, but more quality time. And ultimately, a certain basic minimum number of hours were placed on time and learning. For high schools, of course, it's 990. So that's where we started. But again, I want everyone in the viewing audience to understand that minutes is really only a small part of this. We're talking about
minutes are quantitative.
We're talking about quality delivery of education within a structure that's best for students to be able to learn in. And so minutes, again, is only a part of it. 990 is the watchword.
We will add minutes next year. That's quantitative. How can we add a qualitative component to that? What have you been doing to get ready to add the qualitative part?
Well, one of the things that Ed Reform also allowed for was a certain amount of monies to schools that wanted, in fact, to restructure, not to do business the same old way. Obviously, the easiest thing for us to have done was to just add minutes to the day. And we should remember that in addition to saying 990 minutes, there were stipulations that said the old way of doing business with study halls, your recesses and your passing times, your breakfast programs and lunch periods, none of that was allowed to count toward time and learning. So either schools had to extend the day or they had to restructure the time that they had. We applied through a faculty interdisciplinary committee group for one of the available grants. In the second year, last year, we were awarded $40,000 over 5 years to, in fact, direct our efforts at a restructuring of how we use time. And we, in fact, have come up with a restructured program scheduled for next year.
Right. Most of our public went to schools when the Carnegie unit, the traditional 45 to 50-minute period, was in place. How do you see that part of schools changing?
I think that we sat down as a faculty and said, what are the specifications that would be best to deliver a quality education? Rather than start with the idea that every subject should fit into a 45-minute period of time, what do we want it to look like? Let's try to develop a schedule where the curriculum, as much as possible, drives the schedule. What should that look like? And that's what we did. And what we came up with is longer periods of time, 74 blocks, 74-minute blocks, 4 of those, and one 50-minute block, so that next year's schedule will have, in essence, 5 periods instead of 7, with more time devoted to learning, less passing time, and a longer school day.
And isn't it possible, like like many colleges and universities, that students won't go to every class every day?
And in fact, that's part of the plan, where we now meet all of our major subjects. Traditionally, as folks recall, when they went to school, they had English every day. Because the blocks will be longer in 1997-98, those 4 70-minute blocks will meet 4 times every 6 days. And the time, again, that's spent will be better quality time.
Sure. Who has been involved in the process, Mr. Struminski? I hope there's a comprehensive involvement, but who has in fact been involved?
Of course, basic to the study have been the practitioners, the teachers, the team leaders, the people who have to do the delivery are basic to this. They are the people who ultimately had to say, yes, that's better. But there were other constituencies that entered into this. Under ed reform, we have school councils now. School councils made up of elected parents, elected students, elected faculty, and at-large person who have constantly, with me, monitored and participated in the process of building this. I've also tried to bring the student council in as we made progress and to garner their reactions to exactly what kind of impact this would have. So we've tried to reach out to different constituencies, but basic to the thing was my pledge to the faculty that we would build something that the people responsible for actually delivering the instruction and the learning could be comfortable with and felt could succeed better than in the program we have now.
Traditionally, students have been involved in taking courses, and this is the average student. Certainly, some of the more advanced students would fill their schedules and take 7 periods out of 7 periods of learning. But the average student typically went to class 5 or 6 periods a day, had 1 or 2 periods a day of study hall. You earlier emphasized that the time and learning standards effectively eliminate study halls. How will we go about now scheduling so that kids are in class all the time?
Students now basically, as a bottom line, have to select the equivalent of 5 majors, and they take their physical education, and some students now at freshman level take health as a required part of the program. All students next year will have to select 6, the equivalent of 6 major courses, plus their phys ed. And since classes would not meet every day, the average student now would, in a 6-day cycle, similar to what we have now, would have only 2 blocks unassigned. And those 2 blocks are being designed not as study halls, as we knew them, but what we call academic support centers. Places where students who perhaps are having difficulty in math or English or science can go and receive one-on-one, one-on-two help from faculty during the day. Students who are behind, as judged by them, either by themselves or their teachers, can receive quality directed learning during the school day, and that's the big difference.
You emphasize that students who he may be having difficulty. I would hope that those academic centers would also be opportunities for people who want enrichment or who want to embellish their work. It isn't just tutorials for or remediation. It can be centers where kids can do independent studies, can do enrichment kinds of activities. I hope that's
absolutely, and students may not necessarily be in that learning support center. Those who want to do independent projects, we have the opportunity to create independent study opportunities. School-to-work programs are coming in. Our resource center library will be very active. Our new computer center, I expect, will be buzzing with students who want to do things there. So there'll be many, many options. But because we are asking students overall to perform at a higher level, the state expects, and we should expect, that there is some kind of safety net to help those students who may be struggling, so that the focus, students can do things in the Learning Support Center, they can do them anywhere in the building that meet their individual needs.
We've talked with the public before about the qualitative side of this initiative. And certainly I have said publicly that I felt that other components of ed reform, like teacher evaluation, like recertification, like professional development, if we can really implement those 3 initiatives, we can help improve instruction on a qualitative side. Do you sense that those things are in place as well?
Those are absolutely essential to what we are doing. The grant, in addition to some additional monies that were budgeted for professional development at Wakefield, have been used to help, in fact, retrain some teachers who have been teaching for 20 or 25 or 30 years in a standard 45 or 47-minute block to develop new strategies and new approaches in a 74-minute block. Teachers must change what they're doing. In order to do that, we needed to support them and to give them opportunities to learn new kinds of strategies and approaches. So all of those things certainly are a part of the program.
How much more time will students in Wakefield High School be in school? The student day next year, how much longer will that be?
Right now, our school day ends at 1:48. School next year will end at 2:05. Statistically, students will get 5% more direct instruction next year overall.
Those issues certainly were issues that were a part of negotiations with staff, that we had to increase the student day. And again, I'm pleased to say that we were able to successfully work on those issues with staff. But what are some of the other budget impact of time and learning?
Well, when I say that instead of students taking as a baseline 5 major courses, we're saying you need to take 6. The minute you say that, there's a staff implication involved in that. That means in order to deliver that, and as you said, some students already take 6, but many do not. And in order to accommodate the additional need, we are going to be developing new courses, several new course offerings, many of them of a semester nature, which has been one of my objectives since I arrived in Wakefield, to have more variety, maybe shorter types of courses. It means we need additional instructors. It means we're going to need additional textbooks for those courses that we're talking about. And it means that there are some other kinds of things in developing the learning or academic support centers that we talked about in terms of furnishing them and allowing for them to, in fact, physically be able to do what we want them to do.
Next Tuesday evening at the school committee meeting, there will be a budget hearing. And the public can expect to see at that budget hearing a request for increased funds to implement time and learning at the high school. They'll see a request for 5 more teachers. 4 of those have very direct impact on time and learning to take care of that 6th course that kids need to be in. So there will be some budget impact, and we hope the benefits of this whole movement will certainly far outweigh the budget impact.
And I would remind the viewers again that I went before the school committee, and I hope that people take the time to view those meetings. As you recall, I went before the school committee and the public and projected my need for 8 additional teachers, regardless of what happened, in order to do this. Last year, we did add 2 teachers to the high school, which brought it down to 6. And through some other kinds of restructuring, we, in fact, have now reduced it to 5. So my projection was pretty close, and we're looking now for 5 to implement the plan.
How will this all be different for staff?
Well, as we mentioned, I think for staff, one of the things that is going to happen, and one of the things that comes out of every study of American education, and in my last newsletter within the school, I cited this, and that is that while people view teachers as rather social animals, they are in fact very isolated people during the course of a day. They rarely get an opportunity to see one another. And we are looking for all kinds of innovation. I'm encouraging the faculty in the high school to take some risks, to meet together, to propose new approaches. Part of Ed Reform says make learning more meaningful to young people.
More practical, right?
Show them the relationship between their spending time in school and how, in fact, it will apply to their everyday life and make them better people and better wage earners and to do all the things they want to do. This restructuring will allow for that. As principal, I have an expectation that wonderful things are going to come of this. They have to retrain, as I said, in terms of dealing with a longer block of time, a longer school day. So there's some trepidation out there, but we're meeting that. We're sending people out to talk with people who are already doing it. We're bringing people in to talk with us about some of the pitfalls. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, although our restructured schedule is unique in the Commonwealth. It isn't something that we took from someone else. This was developed from our specifications.
Well, change is about. We have certainly changes administratively. We have changes in terms of how this will impact students, how it will impact staff, how it will impact the community. The community for change and for some of the benefits will see some changes. I certainly, on one of my near future meetings, would like to think about a couple staff members joining me to talk about how they perceive this change And I would hope also to invite several students. I'm sure they're thinking about some of these changes, not so much the seniors who are probably smiling that they're going to graduate, but some of those sophomores who said, every change in the world, I get hit by it.
It's interesting. We're sitting in a school program here in television, and one of the instructors said to me that when they looked at, a couple of the kids looked at the restructured schedule, which is on the bulletin board, they said, why can't we do that now? Why do we have to put our cameras away? It would be neat to have longer time to be down here to be working on TV projects. So I'm encouraged by that kind of response.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I know it's an awesome task, but I think the rewards at the end in terms of trying to meet not only a local standard, a state standard, but eventually a world-class standard. We need to compete. That means more time, more quality in our public education. And so I thank you for all the energy you've poured into this, and we'll move on from here. Thank you very much this morning.
Thanks for inviting me.